Originally designated the A-26, the B-26 Invader was a fast, heavily armed attack aircraft that the Air Force used in World War II, during the Korean War, and even into the Southeast Asia War in the 1960s. The Invader was custom designed to attack ground targets behind enemy lines. One version of the Invader had 14 50 caliber machine guns that could fire forward. Very effective. The Invader also had a pretty good bomb load. It could carry 4,000 pounds of bombs in an internal bomb bay and 2,000 more pounds underneath the wings. The Invader had an effect in combat that was all out of proportion to the numbers. There were only about 2,500 Invaders built. And the Invader was very fast. It went about 350 miles an hour. And it replaced another medium bomber during World War II, and it entered combat in 1944. There were two main types of Invaders. There was the hard-nose Invader, and that had a solid nose with 6 or 8 machine guns in it. And then there was a glass-nose Invader, and that typically carried a Norden bomb sight and would be used for level bombing. Well, the Invader didn't see combat until 1944, kind of late in World War II. It stayed in Air Force service, and then when the Korean War started in 1950, its utility was readily apparent. It was used initially for day bombing attacks behind enemy lines, just like in World War II, hitting trains and supply dumps and things like that. But when the Communists introduced the MiG-15 in the fall of 1950, the Invader's missions then went to nighttime missions and were used through the war on these nighttime attack missions, attacking the same types of targets. So the Invader story did not stop at the end of the Korean War, and even though this aircraft was designed and built in World War II, it was still an effective aircraft going into the late 50s and into the 1960s. When the French were engaged in heavy combat in Southeast Asia, the U.S. Air Force sent a number of B-26s from Korea via the Philippines and loaned them to the French Air Force. And in fact, the U.S. Air Force also sent 200 aircraft mechanics to work on these Invaders, along with a few other aircraft types that the Air Force sent. So the French used these Invaders in their combat against the Viet Minh in the mid-1950s. Later, early in the war in Southeast Asia, the U.S. Air Force sent, once again, these Invaders into combat because their speed, their loiter time, their range, and the powerful armament that they carried was still effective. Unfortunately, these Invaders were getting tired, and one Invader, its wings broke and it crashed, and that also happened here in the States. So the Invaders were grounded, but the type still had use. The Air Force contracted to have 40 Invaders heavily modified specifically for use in Southeast Asia. The company that modified them was called On Mark, and what they did is they added fuel tanks to the wingtips, they added more weapon pylons to the wings, they strengthened the wings, strengthened the fuselage, and enlarged the tail surfaces, and also added more effective reversible propellers. And these aircraft, now called counter-invaders, were the most effective truck-killing aircraft that the Air Force had until the introduction of gunships.